Welcome back to another episode of Successfully Unsuccessful Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Dietrich, and today here in the studio in St. Michael, Minnesota, we have Mr. Jake Howes. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Dude, I like to introduce certain guests. All of the guests are very special, but a special guest today for a number of reasons. One, you are a young entrepreneur, and I love having the opportunity to connect with dudes that have started something from scratch. And I had the privilege in some ways. It's an honor, no credit at all. But the reality is that my heart's desire was to put guys in the room who were like you, aspiring at one point to actually find the opportunity to go out on their own. And so Jake, part of our core council now for coming up on this first year, one of the things you had an opportunity to share was this vision you had for a business, and you were able to bring it to the wise council, to the council to give you feedback on your plan. And the reality was, in the first time in like 7 years, I think everyone said, "What are you waiting for? Do this thing." So today I want to introduce Jake Howes, founder, owner of Pioneer Golf Company. I want to make sure that we represent the merch here. Great brand, great job. So maybe Jake, take 30 seconds, tell us maybe about your family, where you grew up, and what you do for work now. Obviously, I just introed it, but I want to hear, the quick version from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Connecticut. I have a younger sister, my parents, and I grew up playing lacrosse. So I went to school on a lacrosse scholarship. And then after that, I spent 7 years in the golf industry. And a lot has happened since then, but I just really didn't feel fulfilled in my W-2. And then obviously speaking with you and a couple other Christian guys here, just really, and I will give you credit for helping me and giving me the strength and the motivation to just go for it.
Yeah.
And I started Pioneer Golf Company, so we build and design custom golf simulators.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Well, the other exciting thing is through the middle of this journey, young dude is engaged and then goes through the process of getting married and has great opportunity to sort of, I think you even had a little mini guest issue to bring to the table, but introduce your wife and how that kind of came together. Because I think what was cool is you hadn't been married yet, and so you got to hear some others' feedback going into marriage, which is exciting.
Absolutely. Got some really good feedback from guys that have been married for, 10 plus years in the group for most of them. And for me, my wife and I met in college. I played lacrosse. She played hockey. We were really good friends. And then once we graduated college, I was traveling a lot for work. I was living in Connecticut. She was in Minnesota. Came out here and just reconnected with her and honestly just fell in love. As soon as I came back from my first trip, I called my mom and I said, "This is the girl I want to marry."
Dude.
And she was like, "Wow," because I've never said anything like that before. So I just bought a house at the time in Virginia. I had 4 tenants. I was traveling most of the year for my job. I said, "How am I going to make this work?" So I decided to, date remote for a year, or we decided to date remote. And then I decided to make the move out here. And then my wife is starting a business as well pretty soon, having a food truck selling organic superfood shakes.
Dude, so, having a chance to know you over the year, but also just a crash course in some of your backstory, because everyone has one. What I found out about Jake, I love this. This is crazy, dude. So, the fact of the matter is you've been a competitor. You've played lacrosse, not a super big golfer, but very competitive, even played college lacrosse, right? And part of you, inside of you, wanted to take this unconventional route. Is like everyone else is applying and doing these other things, and you wrote a business plan and ended up getting a job right away on basically a startup thing in golf. So you took this unconventional path that led to door after door opening. I want to hear from you, though, what was going through your mind to stand out, because I think one thing I've learned about you is that your marketing skills, are a way of you expressing how to showcase a brand that you represent, right? And so you had the opportunity. I'll cut to the chase a little bit. You're working at a kind of a golf facility, right, where you can come and there's 4 bays where you got exposed to this world of golf simulators, right? But then you get recruited to go with the organization that launched this thing in a corporate environment. You have an idea. You have an idea to showcase golf sims and other entrepreneurs that are launching this brands sims, right, and making them available to other homeowners, or are they making them available as they're doing the facilities as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mostly facilities that would have like a bar and restaurant.
Yeah, sweet. So these guys are entrepreneurs that you had this idea, you pitched this idea to the corporate team, which would walk me through this. Like, what was the idea? How did this come together? Because this is insane. I think it really is. The fact that you took together this budget and had this proposal and had this plan, and it turned into 2 years on the road. Let's hear the story for a couple here. How did that get started?
Absolutely. So I start working at this company's headquarters, and they had no one in their marketing department, and they did no marketing to date. They might post a picture once a month of some of the technology, and they had Korean text on it. And I'm like, you know what? This just doesn't really work for the US market. So I start going on Google and I'm looking up, okay, how many golf zone facilities are there in the US? What do they look like? What are the owners like? How busy are they? Are they successful? So I go on these companies' websites. They don't even, or these businesses' websites, they don't even have golf zone listed. So then I start going onto Google Maps and I search for what our technology actually looks like. Because a lot of simulators look very similar, but I could tell which ones were especially for golf zone. So I would click on the listing, I'd call the owner and go, hey, I'm Jake with Golf Zone. You probably never, spoke to anyone at Golf Zone before after they installed it. But guess what? I want to film your facility completely for free. I'll get you guys, 4 to 5 deliverables. You guys could post it as much as you want. I'll tag you in everything to our, 10,000 followers, whatever it was at the time. And we can come out in like a month. How does that sound? And literally nobody said no. So I go back to my CEO. I said, hey, I have a video production team on retainer ready to go. Can I travel the country and film all of these facilities? The goal being to post their success online so that we can inspire other entrepreneurs to buy multiple simulators and open their own ventures.
Unreal. And what was their response to this? Who's this kid that's 22 years old with this big genius marketing plan? And where the heck is the director of marketing? You're hired, basically, right? So you get the approval, and for how long? And tell me like how you pulled this off. What were you doing? What was it like? And this retainer, you're a producer now. Like, where did this come from?
I kind of just figured it out. I called up video team and I'm like, what do you guys need from me? How does this work? They explained to me the whole process. I interviewed 4 or 5 different teams, found which one was a good fit. And then we just started working together, and every project we would just get smarter and smarter. So I'd create the whole schedule, the whole pre-production. I'd ask all the interview questions. I would figure out what kind of shots we needed. I would figure out all the equipment that they had. And it was just really interesting to me, and I took a liking to it. And then at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs were just so fired up because we have a professional production team. Say it's some random facility in Central Ohio, they can't afford $15,000 for a shoot. So they're super excited to have us in there. Everything was super high quality. All the editing was incredible. And then we started getting a couple million views on a few of these videos. One of them is still the top commercial golf facility video on YouTube. So I think that it's still paying dividends for the company.
That's incredible. So was the angle of these videos to feel like a commercial, or more like a highlight video, a storyteller? It was a few minutes. Kind of give me the pulse of what was working in that formula.
We had long form videos. So I went on YouTube and I looked at all of our competitors and I go, okay, they do these 2-minute videos that are like sizzle videos. They don't share much about the story. They just kind of show the product and some cool shots, people laughing and drinking. I'm like, we're taking a different approach. Let's do, like, for one of them, we did a 20-minute demo video, which doesn't even make sense by standards now because everything is short form, has to be quick, reels. I go, let's just break it down for them because our product is really expensive. If someone's making a purchase decision, they're going to spend 20 minutes and watch a video. So we had our national sales director, Jimmy McDonald at the time, come on, and he is a phenomenal stand-up comedian. So he just started crushing on set. I gave him some lines. I gave him the features, attributes, and benefits of the product. And he just crushed, and then the comment section just went off, and they loved it. So that video started performing really well. But for the most part, if we went to a facility, it would be a 5 to 10 minute video, and we would highlight all the coolest things about that facility. One of them had a table in there that was this huge wood table with these giant wooden beams, and it came from a local roller coaster that like closed down at this theme park. And they were like, we had to incorporate some cool elements. So I always tried to highlight something local. about the community or what made their place special.
Dude, so and one thing that I've learned as I'm getting to know you, every time we hang out, I learn something from you, honestly, that you are very interested in kind of pushing the boundaries of what's possible. You like to basically take things as far as you can without being told. And like, you are a terrible employee. But this is the kind of skill set I would invest in anyone, is this. And you would be an amazing person to the point where, you eventually are a liability to go start your own thing, which is what you've done. So let's switch gears a little bit. Now, I know your story continued on a journey and you end up in Minnesota, but what I find fascinating about your story is that, we mentioned earlier on that you just launched your business and also getting married, and your wife's launching one too. So you're in the thick of entrepreneurship. You're kind of living a dream. At the same time, you feel probably very stressed, anxious, and busy often. So first, thanks for being here on the show. But what I want to hear from you is like, why are you doing what you're doing now? Because you have these 7 years prior in golf, and you saw a gap. And so someone who's pushing the boundaries, not being told what to do, had this idea. And I know you had some other great ideas in marketing as well. We talked prior to that, but you wanted to do things differently. And what you're doing now is effectively what's catching on to very, very possible for many people to put golf simulators in their own home. But you're delivering that experience. How did Pioneer get born? And sort of like, what problem are you solving? And what do you see sort of being your differentiator in terms of, first of all, it's Jake. So you're differentiated enough, but what do you see as the opportunity right now in this metro market that you're serving?
Yeah, I think this all started because I had those 7 years of experience, but I thought to myself one day, I'm going to be 45. I might be, a marketing director or something similar, making a little bit more money, but it's not really fulfilling. And with all my experience seeing so many different types of facilities, constantly understanding the market mix, understanding new products, I said, you know what, maybe when I talked to a customer, the company I was working for, maybe a product that my company was selling wasn't the best for them, and one of the competitors was, but obviously I couldn't tell them that. Mm-hmm. So I said, I want to be in a position where I'm brand agnostic, where I could sell any type of technology, any type of solution, partner with all my favorite brands that I've been working with for years behind the scenes, and then just be able to give a complete solution for customers in Minnesota. So as soon as I started my business, I didn't have any leads. I really didn't have anyone I was talking to originally. So I just reached out to my network, and I've been very thankful to have a lot of, quasi partners and people that I've known for a long time that just constantly are feeding me leads now, because I like to differentiate myself on constantly communicating with the customer. I found a gap in the market where people would reach out to these companies or sim solution providers, and they wouldn't hear back for a week, or they'd say, sorry, I'm booked up for 3 months. I am literally texting them back immediately, and I'm there that afternoon to check out their space. They're getting a quote that day, and I'm installing it 2 weeks later.
Dang, dude, you don't get that. And I think you'll find so many people as service providers, I don't know what it is about America, and it's interesting. Like, if you go to request a quote with a manufacturer in China, they are super responsive. You find a manufacturer in the US, it might be days. It might
Absolutely.
be weeks, to your point. So well done. I totally agree with that. So talk to us about the type of solutions. What do they cost? Where are people putting them? Who's the perfect customer for Pioneer? I want to hear a little bit more if I'm interested in putting something. Do I have enough room in my basement here?
It depends. So the first thing we look for is space requirements. You want to have 10 feet of height. That's what we look for. You can have 9.5 and get away with that. If you're having righties and lefties swing, you want 15 feet of width. You can't have all the way down to 10 if it's just you're a righty. And then you want at least 15 feet of depth.
Okay.
So that's what we look for space. Obviously, there's a lot of variety within that. Our sweet spot is custom residential right now. Okay. So these are guys that want to put it in their basement, guys that want to put it in a shed in the backyard or their third stall in their garage. And then within that, there's two different types of golf simulators. You have your cage solution, which is more of a pop-up, and it's something you can take down. If you're moving houses, it's really nice. You can just easily pack it up and bring it with you. Or you can go with a full custom solution where you can get any type of turf, wall panels. You can get a really nice projector, just really make the space feel like it's built in. So those are two different options. And then we have done a number of commercial facilities, which are, more food and beverage oriented. And then we work with golf courses to have them put up in their banquet rooms. And then we also are working with, believe it or not, public schools now that
Really?
are putting it in their gym so their golf teams can improve, and they don't have to pay to go to a local facility.
Makes a lot of sense. So if I'm a homeowner, what's the right time to get involved? Can I have a simulator and full custom job done after my basement's been finished? Obviously, there's a part of benefit of doing it in the midst of a basement remodel, but what are my options there?
If we could work with the architect and or contractors as soon as possible, because a lot of guys, the architect will put it on there as maybe 14 feet of width and 12 feet deep, and they label it golf simulator. And then we come in and the homeowner thinks that's fine, and we say, sorry, you're gonna have to blow out this wall, we need another 5 feet. They're not too happy.
Right.
So we can retrofit it, and a lot of times customers want to. Other jobs, we do have to dig out concrete, we have to move a wall or two. So as early as possible, for us to get involved in the process.
Is it possible to do in a finished basement?
Yes.
It is?
Yep, we've done a few, and that's the nice part about working with Pioneer, because a lot of the major manufacturers do installs, which is great, but they say, hey, you have to have either 18 feet of width or 15 feet of width, or we can't do it.
Wow.
And then I come in and say, well, you guys have 14.6, we can make it work.
Yeah.
So a lot of these companies don't want to customize their solutions. They want to come in, install it in a day, and they're done. Yes, we're going to take a few more days, but we're going to make it perfect and exactly what you want.
Man, this is awesome. So I want to kind of digress a little bit and talk about sort of the meat and potatoes behind the brand. And I think getting to a place where, I think initially you had some design skills and some marketing skills that you'd been doing in other roles in golf, right? And so to go from the idea of like, I can help other brands showcase their brand better, a little more practical and tactical, right? So you have like embellishing the Google presence and Google reviews, working on SEO. Those are some things you've learned, brand image and sort of the feelings you get when you see a brand, all the right things that make a brand good. You had been on that side of it. And I think when we first met, you're like, hey, I see a giant hole in old school, manufacturing and other brands that need to take their brand to the next, generation or century, let's say that. But that pivoted, and the pivot was interesting because you said, well, what if I just do what I know how to do in a product I already know how to, sort of represent? And it, all of a sudden, in a matter of time, not even a month goes by, and you're all in on this idea, right? So I want to help others understand that the path to reality and realizing entrepreneurship is real. I've seen it before my eyes. You've done it. I've done it. But it's possible. You don't have to wait until X. Now, you're not married. You had the opportunity. You weren't married at the time, but you had the opportunity to do this before kids. How have you been able to do that? What was your mindset? Like, what did it take? How did you get the courage? Where did you begin? Let's just kind of unpack, in a minute or two, the playbook you followed.
I think a year or two ago, I really started to consider this and said, you know what, I got to at least start a side hustle to satisfy myself. And my W-2, I think some days if I had a really awesome trade show or we had a really awesome production, I'd get really fired up. But the other 4 days of the week, I'm like, I just don't see the long-term play for this. So last year I started a marketing company for realtors. So I got my real estate license. I said, you know what, let me help brokerages and let me help realtors. So I started filming realtors and building up their Instagram presence and doing podcasts for them. And I did that for 3-4 months, and I was like, it's just not scratching my itch. So I shut that down. And one night I just couldn't sleep last year. I'm just sitting in bed, I'm staring at the ceiling. I don't know why, but I just got up and I started writing a business plan. I said, I have to do something. So I'm staring at my computer and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to build golf simulators. It's everything I've known to this point. There's a lot I don't know about construction, which was really scary. But all the other elements, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fake it till I make it. So I wrote my business plan, and then the next day I got my LLC, and I said, I'm just going to start when I know that the time is right. So I picked a savings goal, and then as soon as I got to that point, I just called my boss and I said, I'm out. So at that point, 2 months before, I started designing my website, and that really got the gears turning because with the company I was working with at the time, I couldn't make edits on the website or make edits on social or anything. It just took so many people's checks and balances and red flags. When I could start doing things on my own, I said, you know what? It started giving me some confidence because I said, it's not that hard. I could figure it out. I could find people to help me if I need it. And it's fun at the end of the day because I get to design it. I get to build it. I get to make mistakes.
Dude, so a lot of it was probably scratching the itch to build and create, right? And so I think God put this in us. In the beginning, God created, and he made man in his image. Male and female, he made us. And so I think of that as the first perfect blueprint of creation. And you had this idea, it wakes you up. But I also believe, and I have to call the story out slightly, very, very what you said, but one slight nuance that I recall, I want to say in the fall, I would say probably maybe August or September, you presented, hey, I have this idea. I'm going to launch this business to the core council, the group we're a part of. And your plan was to take your savings and continue to build it and work through the spring and launch your business in April of 2025. We're 2 months away, and you've been going now for a few months. I want to just highlight something. You were concerned about a few things. One, capital. Two, timing around like optics for your business, how it would look and the exit. You had some real concerns. We spent time talking through those. But part of what the feedback was just go, right? So what you said, you've already answered this, but you literally just had to go. What about the concern for starting and going from, hey, it's August, I'm going to wait till April, to saying and hearing others ask you hard questions, double check your math, basically speak into your life, but also question what you're doing that allowed you to then actually just go? Because I think that piece often is missed, that we often sit alone and we think and we have great plans, and then we procrastinate, something comes up, and we don't just start. Mm-hmm. You just started. Actually, you had layers of just starting, and you were going to wait. You were being extra conservative. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I get it. Makes sense to me in some ways, but that wasn't the feedback you had. Walk me through, or walk us through, what happened in your mind that flipped the switch to just go.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of forgot about that, but I did have like a 6-month plan, and I think every day it would just get worse. I'd call people and be like, hey, should I quit tomorrow, but like start the business, but not tell them? Because basically my predicament was, if I started the business, it would be a conflict of interest with the current company I was working at. So what I decided to do was to start, but not promote my brand. So I started doing some side jobs, which were doing really well. And that started to build some momentum. But at the end of the day, I get a call one day from, and I was going to quit on a Monday. It's kind of funny. I get a call on a Friday from someone in my company, and they go, hey, I hear you're installing golf simulators. Someone that's one of our dealers just called me and let me know. And then for me, that was like a sign from God to, I just called my boss before everything got out of control and said, I'm out on Monday. So I didn't want that to be, an ethical predicament, and I didn't want that to drag on. And for me, I think once I quit, it just felt this relief off my shoulders, and I had a little bit of savings, and I realized I had a 7-month runway to get going. And that was the scariest part for me. I said, what would happen after that 7 months if I wasn't successful? And then thankfully it has been pretty busy initially. So
yeah, that's incredible. It's funny because I have this conversation more often than I want to, but there was a season in life, I think many, depends on the order and depends on your discipline and saving, but where a paycheck comes in and your expenses go out and there's not a lot left over, right? And whether you're 12 when that happens or 16 or 35, making income, it doesn't matter if your spending is out of control, right? So it doesn't matter where you are, who you are. You had runway, you had a buffer, and that's a great thing. But I've been in this place now. I've sold, 4 businesses, basically 2 of them in 21, and then sprinkled throughout the last one in 24. But I've been running on runway for a long time, where my expenses, they haven't really changed a ton. In fact, I'm reinvesting. And the idea is, well, I'm investing into something now with really big meaning, with big purpose, and with big scale. And my runway is, what other people are calling retirement, I'm calling as my runway. And so I'm on Project Runway right now, or Flywheel, which either one is. The fact of the matter is money eventually runs out, right? And so that forces us to really work hard and push us towards getting going. And so I love that. At the same time, I'm on this uncanny 2-year journey, 2.5-year journey of runway that I'm working with so far to get the big flywheel moving. So it can be done at this scale, it can be done at a bigger scale, and that's the reality. It's if we are stewards of what God gave us, He put something in us, and He who began a good work in you will finish it. He has given us this desire to create. So way to take a step into that creation mode. So I digress a little bit, and something you said earlier too, this itch, I don't know exactly the verbiage you said, but the idea is, finding something that you knew you're going to start a side hustle. And part of it was like, you knew in you that you were going to do something, and finding meaning in doing something of your own is very fulfilling. But along the way, we have a lot of imposters in our own head and around us telling us we can't. Did you have second, doubts and questions in your mind from the enemy, from others about what you're capable of, and through this journey that maybe we haven't heard?
Yeah, I think some jobs I had a lot of confidence. I had installed a few, and then the CEO of the company told the receptionist he was really impressed with me, and then the receptionist would let me know, and I'm like, wow, that was a big boost for me. And then other jobs I'd make, a $30,000 mistake, or what I thought was at the time, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna figure this out. So,
and this is along the way. This is after you've started now, but even going up to before you started too, did you have some of that?
I did around the construction side of things. That was my biggest question mark.
Did you ever almost get to a place of not going in?
I thought it was the only option. I kept looking at my life and saying, if I want to spend more time with my kids in the future, if I want to spend more time with my wife, if I want to be able to go to all my kids' practices and be able to go to church, like, I need to be in control of my job. Even if I'm making half as much as I do in my day-to-day right now, I'd rather have that lifestyle.
Yeah, man. And there's something about that contentment to be able to, want first to have that goal to create for yourself, for your family. And that certainly drives a lot of it. And, some people get blinded by material things, right? And so there's always a check and balance there and what's really driving behind that. But it's ultimately freedom, right? The chance to choose what you're gifted and passionate in. And at some point, the challenge then is, we're so passionate about some of these things, we take our eye off the ball, and we know my story. But for you and your journey, and what I love I recently discovered that, not growing up in a faith-filled home, that your exposure to faith was maybe through some friends throughout the years, but a friend of mine, a mutual friend of mine, asked you some really great, hard questions. And as you experienced church in a new way, you had become, asking yourself, what's this all for? And so, coming to faith more recently, what have you realized, life with Jesus versus prior to and life without? Because it's sort of like you've experienced this freedom in building your own business, right? But there's a whole nother freedom that I think people are mistakeably every day forgetting. That freedom in Christ allows us to live in a way that honors Him, away from shame and guilt. All those things that we carry on that weigh us down are just lies of the enemy. To live in freedom of time and money are great. You mentioned those. Being able to pursue what you're passionate about. But let's talk about freedom of anxiety. And I know there's always some of that because we're human. But, underneath all of it, we are made to glorify and honor God with what we're doing, right? And freedom to be able to express ourselves as part of it, but not carry around all this crap. What have you discovered in your own faith journey now over 27 years of life to get to this place of like, I didn't know the Lord and now I'm walking with the Lord? How has your life changed? And how did you get to that place where you probably couldn't just do it on your own anymore?
every day I feel more confident. I feel more calm. I feel like there's a motivating presence, and I have this kind of safety net in the Lord.
Mm.
I think before I found God, it was constant stress, constant anxiety, constant worry. And when I look back, it's like there was some of that in my life, but I still have that now, but I just don't feel that presence as
Yeah.
much. And now that the more I'm in small groups and in core counsel and taking, Christian guys trips for 4 days without your phone, it is just so powerful to hit the reset. And then I find myself also praying throughout the day when I have downtime, and I'm like, great, where's my next lead going to come from? And then I get a call the next day from someone that wants to purchase. So it's just been doing wonders in my life and in my marriage. My wife and I have been praying every night together, and we go to Substance, and I'm sure we could be doing more, but for me, it's just putting me on the right path, and it allows me to take time out of my week to really reflect on what is important to me. And overall, it's just a really humbling experience. And I think the Lord has just been driving me towards being patient with new customers and being patient with my business and with my marriage. And it's just all the things I needed in my life, but I never really had anyone that could just, let me experience that.
Yeah, and I think it's so powerful, man, what you're talking about. Like the patience for me is like I have, 5 kids, some of them younger, some of them older. And let's be honest, I have more patience now, not because I deserve it, but because I let go of being in control and wanting me and chasing me. And a lot of times, I'll be honest, I would lose my cool because a kid would interrupt me from what I was doing. And so I would be interrupted. A kid would interrupt me from what I see that was doing. Now, at the end of the day, that's just selfishness inside. And a kid, yes, they need to learn patience too. But I'm on the journey, and so love is patient, love is kind, love is envy. Love does not envy, it does not boast, is not proud. It does not. It's not self-seeking. It does not dishonor others. Wow, wow, wow. Like I need to learn love. And so through my own experiences, practicing what does this all mean? It's not about me and loving others. Let's start with my little kids. If I can't love my kids when they want dad, and I'm going to lose my cool, and every 2 seconds some kid's yelling, trust me, I still lose my cool. But patience, bro, right? Like I had to learn it. Like I could promise you that I was here and I've come here, still ways to go. But like we talked about, sometimes people just are not kind. Sometimes clients are not respectful, right?
Yeah.
And the difference between sharing how you feel and being kind and being direct in what you're saying, sometimes it's just swallowing our pride and not having to just lash out. So patience is one. Sounds like you're learning as well. What do you feel like has been, you mentioned calm, and this sort of purpose is sort of surfacing under this too. How in your mind have you been able to find meaning in your work right now for the kingdom, for the fact of, yes, you're building an asset, you're building a business, and purpose, if you build this business to 8 figures, 7 figures, Lord willing, and you sell it, right? What's left and what's purpose in all of it, right? So if we get to the end and it's just like, oh, there's, great, what's it all worth when we've given up our soul perhaps, right? So how do we find purpose in our work today? How is that being threaded in with your found, faith in this journey you're in your marriage, this new marriage you're in community that you're in? What is the Lord teaching you in purpose around your gifts and skills and life lessons right now?
For me, I've always loved mentoring. I've loved coaching. I coached lacrosse for the last 15 years. I did give it up last fall to start my business. And I think for me, my vision is to bring on Christians or those that believe that can help me grow my business, and I can also be able to mentor and guide them in the same direction that I'm going in. And then if they want to start their own business, I want to be there for them as well. And then giving back to the community, I think there's just so many ways that I can give back equipment and give back lessons and opportunities for those that want to learn and play golf in communities that don't have a lot of those resources. So this spring, I'm going to be doing some charity drives where I'm going to be collecting clubs and bags and then donating those to some youth groups.
That's great. Talking about finding purpose today, but also how at some point your time could be freed up to pour back into others. And I think there's this fine line too, sometimes living for the future, which is for this version of us that we're not yet ready for. And I've found that version of us sometimes, and you would appreciate this, right? There are a lot of people that maybe cut corners that actually hurt future Jake or future Josh. And I think you're the kind of person who wants to do things right. And so thinking about that, a foundation, right, is established in Christ, allows us to live a life according to his will and purpose. We've covered that. And then obviously from a financial standpoint, starting and growing a business is not for the faint of heart. It is hard, but is very fulfilling and rewarding, right? And the finances aren't even promised, but they are very real potential. So I think the other part of it is time, right? So as you're thinking about this, you're spending a lot of time right now. You're trading time for upside. At what point, what are your goals around being able to achieve this imbalance of, right now I'm trading time for the opportunity to earn. And then at some point, getting it all is a guy who's saved, a guy who is, free in Christ, has a business that's working, it's making money, but he's getting his time back. And then that means sometimes you're playing pickleball for 4 hours a day with 60-year-olds. And then I was just longing for other dudes like you and others that had financial, capabilities, but also freedom of time, freedom of business and finance, but freedom of time. It's hard, right? It's one of our largest assets that we sometimes take for granted. How are you building smart today, thinking about your time as a trade, right, at some point? But when does that shift for you, do you feel like, to get to this place where you get kind of both, you get time back as you're building this business? Is that in the next year or two, and you plan to hire, or how does that look?
Absolutely. I think these first 6 months is just a sprint for me. It's how much experience can I get doing all these different types of builds, installing all these different types of technology. And along the way, I'm creating instruction manuals, I'm creating how-to videos, I'm creating just guides for customers. So I'm starting to build these processes that once I hire someone, I can be able to pass that along and say, hey, look, I've already done 10 of these. This is exactly how you do it.
Smart.
For me, there's so many things that are new right now, which is awesome. It takes me a little bit longer to figure that out. But once I get to that point, I think that I could then find a partner that would be able to pick up in the categories I'm not so great at, like full-blown construction, maybe more on the project management side of things. And then I could focus more on making sure the customer is getting the best tech, the operation side, and marketing, sales, stuff like that. So I think it's going to be interesting what the next year looks like. Maybe it looks like 2 employees. Maybe it looks like a partner. And like you alluded to, I don't really have a balance with my time right now. And it's tough. Sometimes I work 3 weekends in a row and I'm not home to help with cleaning and laundry and meal preps and all the wonderful things my wife has been really helping with. And it's been difficult because she doesn't know my schedule. I don't know when I'm going to be home. Before this, I was very detail oriented. I put everything on the calendar. I knew exactly when I'd be home. For both of us, it's kind of an adjustment where everything's on the fly. Yeah.
And I think there's seasons for everything, right? And as you're going through this now, you're having to move some things around and shuffle and find out what works. You're not only just launching one business, you're launching her business too. And then you're trying to figure out how to be married and try to figure out how to be business partners. And there's no shortage of challenges for you right now. So I think good news is you a strong grounding in faith, and where the Lord is involved in your marriage, is involved in your business, and you're honoring him in what you're doing. Definitely an encouragement, and a reminder to all of us, community, whether it's a small group or a group of guys that you're doing life with, whatever that looks like, a core counsel group, a friendship, a business partner, that you can go, and this, you've done it, you can go really fast alone and by yourself. I don't have to go through this and that and checks and balances. I'm already too big. I'm already doing that, and I don't have the revenue I need. I literally have, to do this podcast, 5 hands in the cookie jar. And it's like, well, who's the owner? Like, no, let's simplify it, right? And so it does get more complicated, but that's where systems thinking comes in, right? So you're already thinking about that. That's incredible. I think the same goes for our life, right? The foundation we build our house on in Christ, and I think that means being mindful of what is most important and understanding, are we living in the way we're supposed to every day? And so if the first things first, it's a reminder for me, like my day has to start at 5 a.m. because if I want to be productive in my work, I need to be able to do more because I have just this amount of window. And I was talking to my wife yesterday. It's like, yeah, 3 or 4 o'clock, I'm done. Like some people aren't done. Like they just keep grinding. And I used to grind till 7, 8, 9 o'clock, but now I have kids. And now I only have from like 3 or 4 until 8 o'clock until some of the kids have to go to sleep. That's not a lot of time to be dad. And so even yesterday, dude, the first time in years, my 10-year-old or almost 10-year-old is like, I'm going to read with him, and I'm going to take a minute because he's going to be poof. And if he doesn't know the Lord, it's because of me probably not showing him the things in life that he probably needed. And like, I'm able to stop and say, where am I not meeting the mark? And that's a framework, right? If we start looking through the lens of God's priorities. And I sometimes wonder, what am I building? Why am I building? Well, it has meaning, it has purpose, it has kingdom impact, but don't overlook, right, the first things first and God's order and design of that. So sounds like you got a good head on your shoulders. I know what you're thinking and where you're headed is designed around scale, and so no doubt you'll get there. I want to just take a second and say, thanks for sharing all of your insights. I think it's been awesome. And I told you this before, I still mean this. I still learn from you. And so to sit back and hear a guy and share a story right in front of me about how he went from here to here, it's encouraging for everyone. It really is. If I can do it and Jake can do it, you can too. And Dave in our group said the same thing. He's like, I've been around entrepreneurs. I can do this. Why am I not living the life that I want? He watched his own child run an Ironman, and he was on the beach feeling fat and sad for himself. He says this in the podcast I had with him. And the reality was, he's like, no, I can do that. I'm just choosing not to. And if we choose the good, choose to pursue what God gave us to do, there's so much life we can live, and that's rewarding and fulfilling. So those are my words, encouragement of, congratulations to you and taking this step and getting things off the ground. Pumped to hear more what's going to happen. I'm not sure if I'm your ideal customer because I'm terrible at golf, but I know a way to get better, I guess. But thanks so much, Jake, for being on the show. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
You got it. Well, this has been another episode of Successfully Unsuccessful. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.